Hey there, everybody. It's Brittany with Chattanooga Life and Style. So I was hoping to get this content for Chattanooga Life and Style going this summer, but with things being what they are with the whole COVID-19 situation and all of us at home probably getting a little bit bored, needing some mental stimulation, I thought it would be a great time to interview some of the faces of our local economy. So I know a lot of emphasis is being put on physical health at this time, but if you walk around downtown Chattanooga, you realize mind, body, spirit health, and of course financial health for our community is really tied to the backbone of our economy, which is these entrepreneurs. So today I have Kyle Barels with me to do our first interview, sort of a home story, really. Kyle, thank you for being here with us and for inviting us into your home and being willing to share your story today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
So if you would talk a little bit about your business and how long you've been in business here in Chattanooga.
Well, the business is Dance Tonight Chattanooga, and it is a ballroom dancing studio that basically translates to any partnership dancing, anything you would see on Dancing with the Stars. We're located in the South Side, and we have been in business for, this August would be 8 years.
And what initially inspired you to start your own business?
Well, it really was something that we were presented with and just jumped on. So a little quick backstory. The studio was a franchised dance studio, and the owner at that time was going through a bit of a burnout. And my business partner and I, Casey, had an opportunity to take it over just to kind of save it in a sense, because the studio had been in Chattanooga for over 20 years. And it was the kind of thing to where if it lost an owner and had to shut down, there were going to be a bunch of students that were homeless. And we didn't want that, but we never really had intentions of owning. We were both just teachers. At that time, I'd been teaching about I'd been teaching about 6 or 7 years. Casey had been teaching about.
When you just said that, I was thinking back to, I've probably known you and I met you at that studio you're referring to probably 14 years ago. It was a long time ago. So you've been at it a while.
Yes, and it's been a journey. It really has. Even though we ended up changing names once we took it over, so we would have a little bit more control, and we would be a little bit more inclusive. It's still the same heart that it always was. We just when we changed franchises to Dance Tonight, we really just wanted to make sure that everybody was able to have a home in the dance community and provide lessons to whomever was wanting to do that. We got tired of turning people away. So now we don't have to. We own it. And, our passion really is just spreading the arts through Chattanooga. And, we compete with students, we do showcases, we also work with a bunch of couples, getting ready for weddings or special events. We work a lot of times with people who just want to learn how to dance socially and be comfortable. So yeah, anyway, that was kind of a long answer to your short question.
Oh no, that's exactly the type of just background that I think, people really want to hear now, and to get to know people in our community just a little more intimately. And so you were talking about just the passion behind the business. And that's one thing, I've been to your studio, and that's one thing that I think just stands out from the moment you enter the door. What lessons did you have to learn taking that passion as an artist, as an instructor, to learn the business side of things?
Man, it's still a learning curve to this day. And you have to look at things from a business perspective, but it really does come back to that word you said, which is passion. Because if you're in any industry just for the business, my thought on it is it's going to be short-lived. And you have to have a passion for your product, and you have to have a passion for the people whom the product is benefiting. And, really, it just it translates into all the minutia of running a business, managing employees, and and all of that. If your heart's in the right place, then well, that's to a certain degree. Your heart has to be in the right place, but you also have to have a plan, and you also have to have follow through and execution.
What have been the areas in which you feel like you've just naturally adapted to, and what are the areas in which you feel like have been the most challenging to learn?
I mean, that's what kind of answers both of those questions is introvert versus extrovert, because I am naturally an introverted person, so I'm handling this quarantine thing rather well. But all
Introvert's dream in quarantine, that's right.
yeah, but no, all joking aside, being in a service industry, as well as the arts, it's an interesting combination, really, because from the arts perspective, I can be on stage performing in front of thousands and never have to interact with a soul.
That's an interesting take on introversion too.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting in that sense, but then you take the ownership aspect, the marketing and networking aspect, and you have to be willing to put yourself out there. You have to be willing to just communicate one-on-one and to groups of people. So I would say that's what I struggled with the most, not only as a teacher and an educator, but also as a business owner, is just learning how to be comfortable communicating, and let it be authentic.
Hmm. And then what are the areas that you feel like you just naturally adapted to that you didn't really even have to think about?
In my industry specifically,
Yes, and in regards to your business specifically.
the dancing. I mean, it's performing is my passion, and choreography is my passion. So that's something that I don't choose to do. That's something that I have to do. Otherwise, I would implode, basically. So it transformed from the teaching. I'm sorry, it transformed from the performing aspect and the dancing aspect to my passion being in teaching and helping people to become the best versions of themselves through dance, of course, and health and things like that. They go hand in hand, but yeah, I would definitely say that those were my things that came naturally to me was the dancing. Now teaching is also very natural.
And so, just as you know, someone else who we share a lot of passions for health and different things like that, things that tend to be artistic and kinesthetic, how have you avoided burnout doing this all day, every day?
Who said I avoided burnout?
That's true. Or better question, when inevitably maybe, you have burnout when you're working with people all day. I think this is often the untold side of, wanting to provide great customer service is there is a burnout side to business. And so when you encounter those moments, what are some of the ways that you get through that?
Well, when I encountered those moments, I got through it simply by stepping away for a moment and refocusing my north, and making sure that I was doing things for the right reasons and had the right context. I can safely say that I can see burnout coming from a mile away now. And I take the proper steps to avoid it, just by keeping my tank full, because when you're in a service industry of any type, you're giving and constantly helping people. And oftentimes you can feel empty, just because you're constantly giving. You have to keep your tank full as well. So that's very important. But I would say the most important thing is context, having a purpose and having a reason as to why you are doing what you're doing. If that's in check and if it's authentic and real, then that's what gets you up, and that's what keeps you on track.
That's a good driving base to have, to just go back to it anytime you lose focus.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's essentially a mission statement, but for your life. I think a lot of people have such focus in their businesses of, what is the purpose of the business? What is our goal? Short term and long term. But I think people fail to do that with themselves as much, and they forget that they are the business. And if they're not healthy, the business won't be healthy.
Yeah, which is a great point, especially doing something that, like we were saying, it's emotional. It's, it is there's a huge physical capacity to it. So speaking of which, I'm sure, and you mentioned Dancing with the Stars earlier, I'm sure a lot of people just have this question: how do dancers keep in peak shape? What are your personal best tips, knowing that's a passion of yours, health and fitness alongside dancing?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, everybody is different, but me personally, I think diet is very important. I think doing workout, having a workout regimen outside of what your occupation might be is, if it's a physical occupation, is very important. Like in my case, dancing is very physically exerting, but I have to do more. I have to do stuff because outside of my wheelhouse, because my body has become accustomed to so I have to push a little bit harder to make sure that I'm growing physically and meeting and exceeding my goals that I've set for myself. You know, Not only to coincide with the dancing, but also to make sure that like I said, I'm hitting my goals. Diet, if I didn't mention diet, is huge. Yeah, I mean that's basically it. Just cardio, diet, and then whether you're using body weight or actual weight. I think you put those three things together and you're in good shape.
The trifecta of wellness. Now that
That
we have covered some physical components to this, what about just the mental and emotional side, even of not only being a dancer, but being a business owner? And in your case, working with a business partner, right? What are some of the ways that you navigate that process?
Well, I mean, just talking about the partnership aspect in general, Casey and I, we're friends, and it wouldn't work, at least in our case. It wouldn't work if we were not friends. We can talk very openly to each other, and we can just not really. We don't have to sugarcoat anything. He and I do very well in the sense of. If he's having a bad day, I don't have a right to have a bad day at that point. You know, that works for some people, or it doesn't work for some people, but it works well with us. So basically, we just have to constantly keep each other uplifted and keep each other focused on what the goal of the business is, because that's that third entity is the business that we both have to be focused on, but we also have to both make sure each other are in check. And then the emotional aspects of the business, just for me personally, it's just fun. I mean, that's the thing that I love the most about it. I mean, we've all heard, if you do what you love, you'll never work another day in your life.
So true.
When I go into the studio every day, I'm just meeting up with friends and dancing with friends and just helping them to achieve their goals, checking in with them on how their life is doing. In addition to, making sure the dancing aspect is progressing. But I don't know. I mean, it's as odd as it sounds when I look at it as a business because I have to, but I definitely don't see it that way until I'm forced to. It's just so emotionally, it's I love it. I
That's
don't know if I
awesome.
I don't know if I answered your question or not.
No, yeah, you did. I mean, and it sounds like maybe that comes naturally, but were there any resources that you also utilized just to, especially working with a partner, just to have some of those difficult conversations in what sounds like a very mindful way?
Um, Communication is very important, and making sure people feel heard is vital. Whether it is podcasts or certain people who specialize in interpersonal communication skills, whether it's sales, relationships, all these things are the same. So finding podcasts you really jive with, and finding people who are exceptional communicators, that you can get on board with, and just studying them is very important. Um, and going back to just listening, that's the big thing that I think a lot of people struggle with. Whether it is in a business relationship or in a personal relationship, is not making sure the other person feels heard.
What are maybe just 2 or 3 ways that you all have learned to do that? Is it a day by day thing?
It is, and I mean, it's just certain techniques like repeating back something that someone said. I think most people are aware of that. Following through, and yeah, I mean, just communicating with as much transparency as your business allows. Whether it is employer to staff, or employer to employer, or staff to staff. It's just making sure that you communicate transparently, with no hidden agendas.
Mm-hmm. I think that's a great point. And of course, there's so much information in the world now, and we do hear these things, but actually knowing, how to practically apply in whatever context makes sense, I think that's a completely different scenario.
I mean, when
Great
I was
takeaway.
yeah, when I was first learning and practicing these things, I would, and I'm sure we've all heard this, but I would try it on cashiers. I would try it on, people that I would run into, whether they were strangers or whether they were friends. Not to be salesy or anything, but once again, just to learn how to communicate more effectively. And the biggest part of communication is listening. Have to actively listen, as well as be engaged. It's a two-way street. Much like dancing, you have to be able to.
Well, and is dancing, sorry, I keep looking down. I have a little dog running around the house right now. Some of you, if you're not familiar with my dog Ace, viewers, you probably soon will be. But anyway, as we've said before, dance lessons are life lessons. And so what are some of the other just general takeaways that you have learned as a dance instructor that either apply to, again, just 2 or 3, but to life in general or to business in general?
Well, it's an ebb and a flow. Dance is a conversation, just like we have conversations every day. It's not always one person that's leading. Most people think in partnership dancing, it's always the guy or the leader that's leading. But it's not. Both partners are in charge of different things, and those roles in each situation are very clearly established. And I think that's something that's very important, is regardless of the context in which it's being used, the roles have to be established, and there can't be question in it. It might not be traditional roles, but they have to be established, and they have to be known by all parties. Let's see. Dance and life. Being in the moment is so very important. It's very easy when we're dancing, if we make a mistake, to get caught up in that mistake, or be thinking too far ahead, both of which would cause there to be a problem in the present. I mean, much like life, I think we're either living in the past or thinking and planning too much for the future, that we forget to live in the here and now. And especially, with basically the world having come to a screeching halt, I think people are resetting. And I think people are coming to that realization that it's very, very important to be thankful for the present, and not to take that for granted. But yeah, I mean, those are my two main things is just communication and what was the other thing? I just said
Being
it.
present.
Yes, being present. Oh my gosh. Okay. So me living in the past. But anyway, yes. So
Great lessons for life, and for business, I think, in both of those lessons. So, and dance is just the gift that keeps on giving, I think, where the lessons are concerned. So,
I've got one more actually that just popped into
okay.
my, and that is complete ownership. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. Like whenever I'm working with couples, especially, sometimes one person can blame the other person for a dance step not necessarily going the way it should have. Or if I'm dancing with another individual, if that's an amateur, that amateur might assume that if a mistake happened in a pattern that we were running, that it was their fault. And it's not necessarily always their fault. I'm human. I make mistakes, um, complete ownership, just taking responsibility for a mistake when it happens, taking responsibility for something good when it happens, I think is very, very important, not only in dancing, but in life. Because I think a lot of people are scared to be wrong, and a lot of people have this monster in their life called their ego, and they don't put that ego aside and just realize that there is a lot of strength in being able to take complete ownership of actions, whether they are good or bad. They are yours, and they are yours to own.
Absolutely. And on that note, that's a great point. But on that note, how do you think people can work to cultivate awareness of when ownership is available to them, even in what scenarios? Because that's something in life and business that I think would be very helpful. But it's one of those things that you don't know what you don't know. And so I can see how it would be a little challenging for people to get a grasp on that.
Absolutely. So I mean, basically, when I look at ownership, I really equate it personally to mistakes, and that would be if something in a business perspective does not go as well as it should have, then there is someone to blame, and it's not necessarily a conducive thing to point fingers at people. But things do have to be, looked at and realized in order to make them better for the future. So I think it's very important for people to individually take that ownership and just put that into practice, even if it's not solely, if you're working in a team environment, if something goes wrong and it was 70% somebody's fault, that other 30% has to fall somewhere. And, everybody in a team environment is responsible. So, and then individually, just boils down to knowing yourself and knowing and owning when you didn't do something properly or when you could have done it better. I think we should always be striving to be more successful and better than we were yesterday.
I love that. And that being said, what are you still learning about business and dance?
Everything. Everything. I will forever be a scholar, and not only in dance but in business. The business aspect definitely comes harder to me, just because it's not something I ever thought I was going to be doing. I never thought that I was going to be, working for myself. Even though I should have seen it coming, because I always had a bit of an authority complex, and I didn't really, I don't really do too well with having other people tell me what to do. So that's a little bit of the ego that I have to keep in check. So I'm very thankful that we own the business, and it would be hard for me to go back.
It's interesting, Kyle, and what you said completely resonates with me, and I felt the same way. Like, even though I had family in business, it was the last thing that I thought about doing as far as college went. and just having, worked with the chamber, worked with different area groups on workforce development. I'm curious now, looking back, if if there's anything that might have piqued your interest in business, because I feel like I hear this story all the time from area entrepreneurs, and it's just fascinating that the people who have what I consider some of the most passion-driven businesses, it wasn't necessarily their first plan.
No, it's I think a lot of times things fall into place where they should, even if you don't have a desire to be an owner or anything like that. If you're intended to be an owner, fate will find its way to make that happen. And I think people who are intended to be in those positions and be leaders of the community need to step up to the plate, and they need to do that. Obviously, there's going to be a huge learning curve, whether you have a college education, whether you don't have a college education, whether you have a degree in business or not, marketing, whatever, you have to, if you find yourself in a position to where you are an owner or in a management position, you need to take, once again, complete ownership of that. And I look at it not only in the sense of as a business, but I look at it on a community level. Whether we're looking at it as Chattanooga's South Side or Chattanooga in general, that's a huge driving force of our business specifically, is making sure that the arts are being furthered in Chattanooga. And it's so important and so vital. Not only small businesses being vital to a city's economy, but the arts play a huge role in cities.
That's what, throughout this COVID situation, I just feel like, I'm practicing social distancing, but I have gone out and just had a walk downtown, away from everyone. And I do feel like that's the void that I'm feeling, and that I'm sure other people are feeling right now, is just that lack of culture and community, and missing your favorite, spaces and faces and restaurants and entertainment. And so what would you say to anyone who's maybe on the fence about taking the leap, starting their own business?
Chattanooga is the place to do it, honestly. Chattanooga is startup central, and everybody that I know that is a small business owner that I have worked with personally has gone above and beyond to help my business to succeed, and to help other businesses to succeed. Chattanooga has such a big heart, and it's such a loving and giving place. If you're thinking about starting a business in Chattanooga, I would say just do it. Obviously, do your research. Talk to people who are already doing it and who are doing it successfully. That's the key. But I would say don't hesitate. We have a limited amount of time on this earth, and we are the ones that get to choose what happens between those two dates on our gravestone. That little dash is up to us, and we have to make it count for whatever that means for us, whether it is for our family, whether it is for our community. So anyway, long story short, yes, I would say go for it.
On that note, as you look back, just, I'm sure it seems like forever, but it's really been a fairly short time, eight or 9 years, or whatever you mentioned, that the studio has been open. What do you feel like are some of your biggest accomplishments that you look back, small or big moments, and you recognize the part that you played in curating community, cultivating, personal awareness in people? What are some of the moments you're proudest of?
All of the moments that I am the proudest of are with my students specifically, and also with the work with nonprofits that we've done. With my individual students, it is just the joy that I see in them. whether it is doing a dance step properly, or whether it is, completing choreography on a routine or performing that routine. It's just that overwhelming sense of joy that I see in them, and that confidence boost that can't be found many other places. A lot of times, adults, people who are already established in their careers and in their trades, don't become apprentices in anything. They don't challenge themselves and go back to that level of apprenticeship once they've hit mastery in some area. And I think that's so important. So seeing people take on new challenges and reach their goals is always a huge accomplishment to me, as well as, like I said, the nonprofit work. We've been very blessed that we've been put into a position to where we can do what we love, to work side by side with, the Partnership for Family, Children, and Adults for many years, the Kidney Foundation of Greater Chattanooga area, Alzheimer's Association, American Heart Association. Like, we've been blessed to be able to take our passion and use that to save lives.
And so, for people who are more focused on the business than maybe the community, what would you say to those people as far as realizing there's just more to it than a bottom line, thinking more in terms of maybe a triple bottom line?
Yeah, absolutely. There has to be purpose, and there has to be a goal beyond making money. Because of course there are a lot of people out there who make a lot of money, that their goals are not on anything else other than that. And that's good for them. I think it's very important to, be business minded and be focused on that bottom line, but how long will it last, and at what cost? I think, people will always find more joy in what they do if they have purpose in it beyond monetary purposes. Now, if that purpose is to build a legacy for their children or for their grandchildren and their family, that is huge. That is purpose. But to go into ownership of a business, or to go into work and just be focused on a paycheck, there has to be reasons for why you want that paycheck. And it needs to be deeply rooted in that individual, whatever it means to them. Could be a myriad of different things. Money is awesome. It is a big driving force, but people just need to know the reason for them.
And as we're looking at small businesses, of course they contribute to the economy, but as we were saying before, they contribute to the entire culture of a community. And when I look at Chattanooga, and I'm a native to the area actually, as you are, and I see how it's grown, I love the businesses that have opened here, or, folks that have come in to open businesses, and the positive way that they have impacted the community.
Yeah, I can look at it just in terms of the South Side specifically, just because I remember when you wouldn't go to the South Side, you were told not to go there after dark. And, now it is, there's people walking the street all the time, and it's becoming more and more popular for people to start businesses in, as well as live in. Chattanooga as a whole, I'm just so proud to be in this city. I'm so proud to have seen its growth, and I am so excited to see its continued growth and popularity with people just transplanting here. It's got a pull to it, and it's got a certain amount of beauty that just attracts good people. And I think it's going to continue to grow, and I think it is going to just be a place that is rich in the arts and a place that is rich in economy and local commerce. And I'm just so excited to know some of the businesses that are coming here, and just to watch everything kind of come together.
It's an exciting time to be here for sure. And as we're looking ahead to that, I guess I can't help but to think of young people when I'm thinking about the future, thinking about kids and just the role that they will play in the future of Chattanooga. So thinking back to, again, not having had business or entrepreneurship on your radar, what would you say maybe to local teachers, school officials, and even people who are involved in city and county planning as far as how to spot an entrepreneur at a young age? You think there are
Um,
any tips, any signs?
as far as characteristics, I know of all the entrepreneurs I know and owners, they vastly are different. You know, so to pinpoint a certain trait in them, it would definitely be just passion for their product. But to look for that in a child, I would definitely just say to educators specifically, to encourage kids to go for their dreams. And I mean, once again, it comes back to planning and execution. So those things, a dream without a plan is just a dream. And it won't necessarily come to fruition.
I'm just curious, did you use any local resources? And if so, would you mind divulging which ones for anyone who may have a dream of their own?
When we first took ownership, we did a lot of networking. We talked to a lot of small business owners that were doing it successfully in different fields. We did work with a couple of business development companies, and they really did help us to structure what kind of staff we needed. I'll specifically mention Sandler Training. And they did a very nice job, Lisa and Dan Nosley, of helping us to be able to pinpoint people that would work well in our organization. And as small as we are, and as intimate of a studio as we are, it still is very important to make sure you staff, whether it's a small business or a bigger small business. You got to staff it properly, and you've got to know who will work and who will not work. And they do a nice job of helping you realize what you already have in place and what you need, as far as staff members. Beyond that, just networking as much as possible. Just going to as many networking opportunities as you can to meet other owners and figure out more about just the small businesses in Chattanooga. There's always something to learn from everybody, and that's where you've got to just put that ego aside, close your mouth and open your ear, and just take in as much as you can.
Well, Kyle, I have thoroughly enjoyed just this different take. I know you personally, but getting to know your business, getting to know you better. Thank you again for inviting us into your home. And is there anything else that you would like to share as we're wrapping up?
Well, I just want to thank you for having me on, and it's always a pleasure to just to share, communicate. I mean, like I said, we can always learn from people, and I learn from you, just in the exquisite way that you communicate, and
Thank you.
you make the interview process so organic, and it literally just feels like we're having a conversation. So you keep doing an awesome job, and
Well,
yeah.
I appreciate that.
And as far as just leaving people with anything, I would say just love, not to be cliche and everything, but especially in a time like this, I think it's really important for people to understand that there is a lot of uncertainty as far as being a small business owner right now in Chattanooga. There is planning that has to go into effect, and there is logic, but you also have a choice, and that is to live in fear or to live in love and happiness. You know, obviously we're all a little bit on nerve, we're all a little bit on edge, personally and professionally, but we can't let that control us. And once all of this stuff passes and this season is behind us, it's still the same thing. You know, are you going to choose to live out of fear, or are you going to choose to embrace, be present, and live in a position of love, helping people, and just trying to better yourself every day, better your family, and better your community.
You know,
And
it's
that's all.
interesting you should mention that, Kyle. Earlier today, I was ruminating a little bit on Pandora's box. And, you know, there are two schools of thought with that one being it could have been fear in the box, and the other being it could have been hope. So for anyone who is looking forward, hopefully, to the future right now, and maybe they have some dance lessons as a result of this interview on their radar, how can they get in touch with you and everyone at the studio?
Absolutely. You know, the best thing is to just get on our website. You can Google us, Dance Tonight Chattanooga. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, all main social media outlets at Dance Tonight Chattanooga. And yeah, we're ready to get back on the dance floor, and we are ready to start dancing again.
And I'm sure those of us who have been to your studio, we're looking forward to getting back there. And for anyone who's not been yet, I strongly encourage it because it's so much fun. And you all do provide just such a unique experience here in the Chattanooga community. And I know so many of us really appreciate that. So thank you. All right, Kyle. Well, this has been great. And for anyone who wants to kind of keep following these interviews, I am Chattanooga Life and Style on all social media platforms. Thank you so much, Kyle.
Brittany.